there is a discourse of Muslim samage and Hindu samage which is nurtured by all political parties in such a way that common Muslims and common Hindus do not have any role to play in it. Obviously, whenever I make a nuanced argument, people would say there is no need for a nuanced argument. Many people would buy and admire book if I say Muslims are actually victim in this country.
For younger Muslims who consume mass media, that there's actually no choice between either you are a threat or you are under threat.
There is third part of it. And that third part is...
I think Aurangzeb, Tipu Sultan, at least in the run-up to elections, made more news than any other civic issue.
This heroic image of Aurangzeb is an outcome of Hindutva politics. Figure like Rana Pratap, Aurangzeb, these are political figures. These are not historical figures. There wasn't any Mughal state. It was a Mughal Rajput state. Even during the time of Aurangzeb, it was a Mughal Rajput state. So if the temple was demolished, what was these Rajput were doing? If a person is killed just because his or her Muslim identity, this is an important issue. So it is something which require political attention. There is a need to have a principled position on Muslim identity by the non-BJP political forces. Muslim questions are national questions, and until and unless we pay attention to the national question, we won't be able to understand the Muslim question.
Welcome to Newslaundry Interviews. Today we have with us Hilal Ahmed, writer, columnist, associate professor at the Center for the Studies of Developing Societies. Now you're out with your new book, which is A Brief History of the Present, Muslims in India. And when you say Muslims in New India, what you mean by New India, we all know. What is it about this moment in time in India that led you to write a book about Muslims in New India?
I have been working on Muslim communities for over 2 decades.
Yes.
So this is not something extraordinary. I decided not to work on Muslim immediately as if I felt something of doing it. It was actually an area of research on which I have been working for a long time, and this is an object of my study over the years. So it is a continuation of my previous work. One must have some kind of a principled distance from the people you work on. So I work on Muslim, it does not mean that I represent them. So therefore there is a distance, a principled distance, which is very important to underline. One, therefore I'm not representing Muslims, but at the same time I do not want to give up my Muslim identity either. On the one hand, we use rather freely terms like minority, Muslim, homogenization. These are big words. But when it comes to here and now, when you interact with real life people, you encounter...
And there's no space for the everyday Muslimness, which you talk about in your book also. Why has it come to this?
The non-BJP parties are not, they are sympathetic towards liberal, but they won't take that position. So therefore, this silence of non-BJP parties is something which is very important, and that's why I would, even now I argue, that there is a need to have a principled position on Muslim identity by the non-BJP political forces. Hindutva discourse is not merely practiced by BJP. It is the dominant narrative of Indian politics. Some way or the other, all political parties actually using it in some ways to gain to access to electoral politics. So therefore, there is a need to recognize the...
One of the Pew Research findings that I found very interesting was that though most Indians agree that diversity is important, when it comes to intermarriage, most societies, Hindu, Muslim, agree कि नहीं होना चाहिए.
The imagination of secularism that was given to us was just based on this, that you live in your domain and I live in my domain, etc. I won't have any right to criticize what is there in your domain, and I won't allow you to enter into my domain and criticize what is wrong here. Gandhi also said something very interesting about this.
So your point is to what went wrong is basically political parties leaving the domain of social change.
Yes.
It just becoming a means to power rather than also being present in society, being seen as change makers.
Every political party had a wing called political education wing. So they had social wings. So you have a political party which would contest election, etc. For example, Congress as a party was, they are very much a professional party in 60s and 70s. But it had something called Congress Seva Dal. So the idea of Seva Dal was and Nehru used to come to Old Delhi to have pan in the evening. So he would come around 10 p.m. to have his particular pan near Jama Masjid. My father-in-law was sitting there and he saw him and he called him, "Kya karte ho?" And he said that I'm a college student. And he said, what are you doing at the moment? Go back. So, that sort of relationship people had, because they knew that these people, these politicians are not merely politicians, they are involved in something else. And that something else is social change. Somehow we stopped that social change.
And BJP continued it with RSS in
Absolutely,
some sense.
yes. But my question to these people is, what is your political morality? What kind of morality you have? You never criticize BJP whenever they do anything wrong. What about the cases of lynching? Because obviously for you, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. But what about when a person is killed just because of his or her Muslim identity? Why you are silent then? So are these Muslims not part of the samage you belong to?
Let's come to our favorite character from TV news, who's Aurangzeb. In fact, we joked that I think Aurangzeb, Tipu Sultan, at least in the run-up to elections, made more news than any other civic issue.
Figure like Rana Pratap, Aurangzeb, these are political figures. These are not historical figures. Aurangzeb was always seen as a bad person. So therefore, this idea, this figure is actually imposed on Muslims. So once a figure is imposed on you, your historical memory would start looking at resources, draw those resources from the past and construct an image of a hero. Demolishing any place of worship in Islamic sense is absolutely not permissible. One. Second is that if it was done, it cannot be done without the consent of set of people who were not Muslims. Because that was a very complicated, there was no, if you go back to history and ask me a historical question, I would say there wasn't any Mughal state. It was a Mughal Rajput state. Even during the time of Aurangzeb, it was a Mughal Rajput state. So if the temple was demolished, what was these Rajput were doing?
I think it was Nasruddin Shah who, gave this statement that if Muslims are celebrating Taliban, then it's very dangerous. And you say that, Nasruddin Shah asks Indian Muslims to take clear positions on Islam. And this question is posed as a multiple choice question with only two options.
So my criticism is basically, do not say something on which you have not done anything systematically. He said that, and this is what I call outdated modernity. He was saying that now Indian Muslims, 20 crore people, they have only two choices, either to support or to become liberal. No, often people would say that, obviously whenever I make a nuanced argument, people would say there is no need for a nuanced argument. Many people would buy and admire book if I say Muslims are actually victim in this country. No, I don't want to say this.
Free mein itna hi milega. To watch the full unedited interview, you have to subscribe to News Laundry and pay to keep news free. Because we don't run advertising. All our money comes from subscribers like you. And that is how public service journalism is paid for. All the studio lights, the cameras, all that you see on our website, it all comes from subscribers. So do subscribe, click on the subscription link, watch all the interviews unedited and pay for public interest journalism.